Hello, Year 8, and welcome to English Lesson 4 on my family and other animals. And we are today's lesson and tomorrow's lesson, and then I see you in person, which I am really excited and looking forward to. So guys, for the second to last time, can you please get ready for us to learn together? Can you make sure that you've got your pen? So find a pen, fetch a piece of paper, focus on one of the tasks at a time, and be ready to fall in love with reading. So press pause and make sure you're ready. Okay, guys, so we're going to do some quick 4 recap and retrieval questions to get us thinking about what we looked at yesterday. So could you tell me the name of 2 of Gerald's family members? What was his family called? 2 of them. He had brothers, he had sisters. What do we know about their names? Number 2. Which country do they decide to move to? Do they travel by boat or plane? And look at number 4. One of these colours is an odd one out. Which colour is the odd one out? Purple, grey, yellow or blue? So you can press pause and write your answers to 1 to 4, and then we'll go through and mark them together. Okay, so can you tell me 2 of Gerald's family members' names? So he's got the 2 brothers, brilliant, Leslie and Larry, and the sister Margot. Gerald is referred to by his family as Jerry, and all we know at this stage is mother is mother. But I'll accept Margot, Leslie or Larry. So which country do they decide to move to? Greece, Corfu, Greece. I'll accept either Corfu or Greece. Now, can you remember, yes, it was a little detail I gave away at the end of yesterday's lesson. Do they travel by boat or plane? Yes, it's by boat. So we get that lovely description of Corfu that we looked at yesterday as they approach by boat. Now, which colour would you say, based on what we've been looking at yesterday, is the odd one out? Purple, grey, yellow or blue? Now, I was really hoping you'd say grey, because grey is one of those grimy, miserable colours that the writer uses to describe Bournemouth. Purple, yellow and blue are part of the rainbow of colours that he uses to describe Corfu. Brilliant. Now, I'm going to read to you, and then tomorrow we're going to read an extract together. We're going to learn, as we talk, about some new vocabulary, and I'm going to say it's what we call field-specific vocabulary. Sounds really posh, doesn't it? But it's vocabulary all to do with insects. Ooh. And we're going to use a task, a question that I'm going to set you to get us thinking. And we're going to make sure that we understand what we read today. So it's those same process. Now, these are just all really good reading strategies. Think about the vocab, use questions to get us thinking, check that we understand what we read. Now, today, I'm going to read to you a chapter. That sounds quite a lot, okay? But first, before I read you the chapter, I need you to copy this table. Now, you can see that we've got 2 columns, insect name and feature. Now, in brackets, it says colour, size, where it lives. Now, you've got up to 10 insects. If you imagine we're going on a bug hunt, an insect hunt, as I read to you today, I know there's at least 10 insects. Now, if you get all 10, that is superstar status. I would give you so many kudos points. Okay, I'd give you 3. So if, as we read today, you're able to get the 10 insects, that you're able to spot the bugs as you go on a bug hunt as I read to you, and you can give me 1 feature. So it doesn't have to be all of these, but you might see that he talks about a caterpillar and it's orange. So you might write caterpillar orange. Or you might see that he talks about a butterfly and he says it's huge, huge. It's a huge butterfly, so that'd be butterfly huge. So when we talk about feature, it's really, can you pick up on 1 thing that tells us something about that insect? Maybe the colour, whether it's large or small, maybe what it does, where it lives. But you only need 1. You don't need lots here. So you might say butterfly orange, butterfly on a leaf. Okay, now all of the answers are going to be in what I read you. So you do need to make sure you've got that table down in your book or on your piece of paper before I begin the reading. And then it's going to be your job to hunt for the bugs in the chapter as I read to you and to make a record. Okay, so press pause give yourself time to get that table down. And then when you press play, I'm going to begin to read to you our chapter 2. Okay, guys, so it's me doing the reading today. Let's just quickly remind ourselves. So they've moved from from Bournemouth to Corfu. The last little bit of the chapter we looked at yesterday, the boat was arriving. They were looking out across the misty sea. Suddenly the sun came up and they could see these beautiful colours of Corfu. Mud, chocolatey, muddy brown, purples and blues in the oceans, a flaming orange sunrise. It was gorgeous. So it's already setting us up to think that Corfu is going to be a place where they are very happy. So today I'm going to read to you chapter 2. Okay, let's go. This doll's house garden was a magical land, a forest of flowers through which roamed creatures I had never seen before. Now this is important, isn't it? Because remember, we introduced a couple lessons ago this word inculcate, which means that you learn to love something, but you teach yourself, to love something over time. Now, this is the beginning of Gerald Durrell as he begins to teach himself and fall in love with insects. Now, I have to be honest, I haven't learnt to love insects yet. I'm still a bit squeamish around certain insects. I can be brave around others, but they are not my favourite creature. And this chapter 2, is all about the insects, the creatures that Gerald Durrell learns to love as he lives in Corfu. So this doll's house garden was a magic land, a forest of flowers through which grown creatures I'd never seen before. Among the thick, silky petals of each rose bloom lived tiny, crab-like spiders that scuttled sideways when disturbed. Bug hunt moment. Okay, so what's the first insect he discovers? Yes, spiders. So you could write number 1, spiders. What did these spiders do, or where do they live? So they live on the petals of a rose bloom. They scuttle sideways. So into your table, okay, and I won't keep doing this, it's just to get us into it. So you would write number 1, spiders or crab-like spiders. Okay, they live on petals, they scuttle. Okay, so that's teaching us something about the insects. Now, I'm not always going to flash back to the table, guys. That's going to be on you as we're looking and learning together. Look at that beautiful close-up on that spider. Whoa. Okay. They're small, translucent bodies. So he's still describing the spider. Translucent means their bodies are see-through. Their small, translucent bodies were coloured to match the flowers they inhabited. Pink, ivory, wine red, or buttery yellow. On the rose stems, encrusted with green flies, ladybirds move like newly painted toys. Ladybirds pale red with large black spots. Ladybirds apple red with brown spots. Ladybirds orange with grey and black freckles. Rotund and amiable, they prowled and fed amongst the anemic flocks of green fly. Now, guys, we've got a ladybug here, just to remind you of what a ladybird, looks like. Now, he says that there's lots of coloured ladybirds where he is. Pale red, black spots, apple red, brown spots. And they prowl and feed. Okay, now this lovely word rotund means they're like almost round and chubby. And they're amiable, so they're friendly. So, what bug have we found on our bug hunt? We found a ladybird. Now, you might also want to write down a green fly. Okay, and what we learned about green fly is there's flocks of them. Okay, and they can encrust the stems. So we've got 3 insects so far. Now, if you're writing down your 3 out of 10, you're doing a really good job. Carpenter bees, like furry electric bluebirds, zigzagged amongst the flowers, growling fatly and busily. Hummingbird hawk moths, sleek and neat, whipped up and down the paths with a fussy efficiency, pausing occasionally on speed misty winds to lower a long slender probus into bloom. I'm laughing at that word probus. Isn't that a strange word, probus? Now, I told you there would be some vocabulary that's all about insects. Okay, so we've got carpenter bees that are growling. Could you imagine a bee growling? That's a lovely choice of words. And it's like grrr, fatly and busily. So we've got a busy bee. We've got this hummingbird hawk moth. Can you see my picture down there? Almost looks quite furry. That's a hawk moth with these big wings. Now this hawk moth is sleek and neat. It's whipping up and down, and it's pausing occasionally to lower a long, slender proboscis. So guys, can you see these antennae? Wrong picture really, because these are the antennae. Now down here, coming out of its mouth would be this long proboscis that goes into the flower to get the nectar. Okay, so among the white cobbles, large black ants staggered and gesticulated in groups round strange trophies, a dead caterpillar, a piece of rose metal, or dried grass head fat with seeds. As an accompaniment to all the activity, there came from the olive groves outside the fuchsia hedge the incessant shimmering cries of the cicadas. If the curing, blurring heat haze produced a sound, it would be exactly the strange, chiming cries of these insects. Guys, so this is such a rich text, isn't it? It's full of insects. If we were real insect hunters, we're learning so much. So you might want to pause at this stage and just make sure that you are recording the names of our insects and one thing about them, a feature. So it could be a colour, something that they're doing. Now, because I love to learn stuff, I had heard of most of these insects except for let's see if I say it correctly, cicadas or cicadas. Now, these cicadas here are native to hotter countries, so we wouldn't get cicadas in this country. We would get ants, we would get moths, we would get bees, but we wouldn't get these, okay? And they make a really distinctive sound. So press pause if you need to. Think about your bug hunt. Record some of those animals that we are finding. Okay. At first, so remember it's Jerry telling us his life story, isn't it? At first, I was so bewildered by this profusion of life on our very doorstep that I could only move about the garden in a daze, watching now this creature, now that, constantly having my attention distracted by flights of brilliant butterflies that drifted over the hedge. Gradually, as I became more used to the bustle of insect life amongst the flowers, I found I could concentrate more. I would spend hours squatting on my heels or lying on my stomach, watching the private lives of the creatures around me, while Roger, which was their family dog, sat nearby, a look of resignation on his face. In this way, I learnt a lot of fascinating things. So this is when he begins to fall in love with insects. He teaches himself, he learns about insects by watching them. At first, it says he was bewildered, so he was confused by everything he saw. But now, he spends hours on his tummy, lying on his stomach, squatting, watching them. But no bugs mentioned. Oh, is there? He sees butterflies, doesn't he? So we could record a butterfly. I found that the little crab spiders could change colour just as successfully as any chameleon. Take a spider from a wine red rose, where he'd been sitting like a little bead of coral, and place him in the depths of a cool white rose. If he stayed there, and most of them did, you would see his colour gradually ebb away, as though the change had given him anemia, until, some 2 days later, he would be crouching amongst the white petals like a pearl. So I love this description. But we can learn more about a new insect. So this is a good crab spider, and it changes colour based on where you put it. So if it's on a red flower, it's red. If it's on a white flower, it changes white. So I was trying to capture a picture here and look for you of a spider that's going through that process. Can you see it was red once? And now look at this beautiful white colour. Now, anemia means somebody that doesn't have a high blood count. I think there's something missing in their blood, so they can be very pale. So if we talk about being anemic or an anemia, it often can be used to describe something really pale. That beautiful close-up picture. So guys, add that to your insect table. Okay, I discovered that in the dry leaves under the fuchsia hedge lived another type of spider, a fierce little huntsman with the cunning and ferocity of a tiger. He would stalk about his continent of leaves, eyes glistening in the sun, pausing now and then to raise himself up on his hairy legs to peer about. If he saw a fly settle to enjoy a sunbath, he would freeze. Then, as slowly as a leaf growing, he would move forward, imperceptibly, edging nearer and nearer, pausing occasionally to fasten his lifeline of silk to the surface of the leaves. Then, when close enough, the huntsman would pause, his legs shift minutely as he got a good purchase, and then he would leap, legs spread out in a hairy embrace, straight onto the dreaming fly. Never did I see one of these little spiders miss its kill once it maneuvered into the right position. So I love this description also. So this is a really almost like a zoom in. If you imagine like one of those beautiful kind of documentaries, we've zoomed in to watch this huntsman spider stalk and capture its prey. Now, we are going to look at this passage in a little bit more detail tomorrow. So I don't want to over talk it. So what do we need to put in our table? So what new insect is introduced? And what features, what can we learn about this insect? Now remember, there's lots of information here, but you only need one thing. So you could say huntsman spider, hairy legs. Huntsman spider eats flies. Huntsman spider, cunning, fierce. Okay? So you get to choose what you're going to record for the huntsman spider. Look at that picture. Oh, look at the close-up of all those really delicate hairs on the spider's legs. Look at its back. I wonder what those little indents are for. Oh, I wonder if that's where its thread comes out. See, I love it. Okay, so you can always mute me if I'm talking and you're trying to write, by the way, which you might have done. Oh, all these discoveries filled me with tremendous delight. So all of the insects made him really happy, so that they had to be shared. And I would burst suddenly into the house and startle the family with the news that the strange spiky black caterpillars on the roses were not caterpillars at all, but the young of ladybirds, or with equally astonishing news that the lacewing flies laid eggs on stilts. This last miracle I was lucky enough to witness. I found a lacewing fly on the roses and watched her as she climbed about the leaves, admiring her beautiful, fragile wings like green glass and her enormous liquid golden eyes. Presently, she stopped on the surface of a rose leaf and lowered the tip of her abdomen. She remained like that for a moment, and then she raised her tail, and from it, to my astonishment, rose a slender thread like a pale hair. Then on the very tip of the stalk appeared the egg. The female had a rest and then repeated the performance until the surface of the rose leaf looked as though it was covered with a forest of tiny club moss. The laying over, the female rippled her antenna briefly and flew off in a mist of green gauze wings. Now, guys, I think this is one of my favourite pictures I found. You know, this really is a lacewing fly, but I think it captures, doesn't it, all the beautiful description he gave us. So these green gauze wings, these liquid eyes. I really do like this. Look at her. There's her antenna. And he describes in much detail this lacewing fly. So let's add lacewing fly onto our bug hunt, onto our table. And any features that you want to remember. So maybe that she's got green eyes, green wings, golden eyes. Anything that's going to help us remember the features of this insect. Oh, this one's not so pretty, is it? Okay, but perhaps the most exciting discovery I made in this multicoloured lilliput, to which I had access, was an earwig's nest. I had long wanted to find one and had searched everywhere without success. So the joy of stumbling upon one unexpectedly was overwhelming, like suddenly being given a wonderful present. I moved a piece of bark, and there beneath it was the nursery, a small hollow in the earth that the insect must have borrowed out for herself. She squatted in the middle of it, shielding underneath her few white eggs. She crouched over them like a hen, and did not move when the flood of sunlight struck her as I lifted the bark. I could not count the eggs, but there did not seem to be many, so I presumed that she had not yet laid her full complement. Tenderly, I replaced her lid of bark. So this, still makes me shudder a bit. So here's our close-up on a earwig. So we've got earwig to add to our table. Any of the features of an earwig that you might have learned. So that she has a nursery, that she lays eggs, anything like that to add to our bug hunt table. From that moment, I love this picture. I'll talk to you about it in a minute. From that moment, I guarded the nest jealously. I erected a protecting wall of rocks around it. And as an additional precaution, I wrote out a notice in red ink and stuck it on a pole nearby as a warning to the family. The notice read, "Beware, earwig nest, quiet please." It was only remarkable in that the two correctly spent words were biological ones. Every hour or so, I would subject the mother earwig to 10 minutes close scrutiny. I did not dare examine her more often for fear she might desert her nest. Eventually, the pile of eggs beneath her grew, and she seemed to have been accustomed to me lifting off her bark roof. I even decided that she began to recognize me from the friendly way she waggled her antenna. Okay, now look at these. So this is the eggs. Here's our friendly earwig waving its antenna. Whoa. So, what could we add? Now, it's the same insect, isn't it, earwig, but we might learn that she lays eggs, that she's under some bark, but it's a very good, that she's got antenna. Love it. Still makes me a bit shivery, though. Okay, are we ready? So, he's guarding this nest of earwig eggs. To my acute disappointment, so he's upset about something. After all my efforts in constant sentry duty, the babies hatched out during the night. I felt that after all I'd done, the female might have held up the hatching until I was there to witness it. However, there they were, a fine brood of young earwigs, minute, frail, looking as though they'd been carved out of ivory. They moved gently under the mother's body, walking between her legs, the more venturesome even climbing onto her pincers. It was a heartwarming sight. The next day the nursery was empty. My wonderful family had scattered over the garden. I saw one of the babies some time later. He was bigger, of course, browner and stronger, but I recognised him immediately. He was curled up in a maze of rose petals, having a sleep. And when I disturbed him, he merely raised his pincers irritably over his back. I would have liked to have thought that it was a salute, a cheerful greeting, but honesty compelled me to admit that it was nothing more than an earwig's warning to a potential enemy. Still, I excused him. After all, he'd been very young when I last saw him. Right, guys, you've listened beautifully. We've read a whole chapter from a book. I've loved it. Now, what I would like you to do, if you have been keeping up with me, you should have a table of insect names and features, and there's up to 10. You might have seen there's more than 10, a few that I didn't have pictures of. But I would like you, if you need to pause, and to end this lesson, you might need to look back over some of the video or rewind it and look at the pages or use the PDF document. Check you've got your insect names. Check that you've got some features, so their colour, their size, maybe where they live, and that will make me really happy. If you get all 10, remember that's going to be 3 kudos points if you can show me all 10 of the insects that you've recorded. If you get 5, I would say you've met me halfway. That's not bad. Less than 5, I would wonder, sadly, even if you just looked at the pictures, you could have got 5. Okay, so I'd really love to encourage you to get to 5 or more. Under 5, 5, brilliant. 10, you're amazing. Well, you're amazing anyway, but 10 would be really, really good, particularly because you're being independent. So get your insect names and your features, and tomorrow we're going to zoom in and look at one of these creatures in particular. Bye.